Hello. Do you work here?
Guilty.
Listen, Joe. We went along with you in season 1 of You, even though you did some pretty terrible things. And then we went along with you in season 2 because, well, wait, why do we keep watching? Even though we know you're just about the creepiest guy out there? What does that say about us? Yeesh. You has become one of the most popular shows on Netflix, and we can't seem to keep our eyes off of its leading man, Joe. We'll admit it, we're addicted. But the true story behind this thrilling series might just have us questioning everything we thought we knew about you. Before we get into all of the juicy details, we've got to warn you that there are some light spoilers ahead for the second season of You. We won't give away too much, we promise. But if you haven't seen it and want to go in knowing nothing at all, then maybe put this video on pause and come back when you've checked out all of the drama for yourself. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Just in case you didn't obsessively binge all of season 2 and then go back and rewatch season 1 again like some people we know, us, here's a quick refresher on You. The show follows Joe, a seemingly mild-mannered, well-read guy who just wants to recommend the perfect book to his customers.
Have you been naughty? Or nice, little girl?
That is, until he becomes obsessed with a woman who catches his eye and goes to terrifyingly extreme lengths to become the perfect boyfriend, even if it means taking out her friends and eventually locking her in a cage, among other things. Season 1 ended with Joe doing the unthinkable and attacking Beck, the woman who we, and he, thought was the love of his life. Except that's Joe's #1 problem. He thinks every woman he becomes obsessed with is the love of his life.
Right.
In season 2, we find him in Los Angeles, hating the entire city before finding work at another bookstore, all while trying to outrun his demons from the past. Of course, Joe is still doing what Joe, now going by Will by the way, does best, fixating on another girl, love. While it all seems random at first, and like Joe really is trying to rid himself of these old habits, we quickly learn that things are a whole lot messier than they seem. But while the story of You might seem too crazy to be real, some out there are wondering if it's all based off of true events. In this day and age, where everyone puts everything out there on social media for the world to see, it's actually not that hard to imagine that it could be. Who of us can say that they haven't cyber-stalked our crush once or twice? We know we have, and it's almost too easy. But luckily, there's a pretty big difference between a little light Googling and going so far as to infiltrate every corner of someone's life and then assassinate everyone around them in an effort to control and manipulate their feelings for you. Right? In some very welcome good news, the story of You isn't actually based off of any specific real-life person to speak of. It's actually based off of a very popular novel of the same name, written by Carolyn Kepnes, which was a huge hit, and pretty much outlines the entire first season of the show. In order to create the character of Joe, Kepnes tried to imagine the perfect guy, the hero that anyone would jump to center a romantic comedy around, and then added a vicious twist. The good news about the reality of this major cyber creep pretty much ends there. Cyberstalking is actually a huge problem, and as we live more and more of our lives online, it has become easier than it has ever been to track someone using their social media. Recently in Japan, a man was arrested after he tracked down a young woman by analyzing the reflections in her eyes from her selfies in order to find out what train station she frequented. And trust us when we say, that is not the first time something like this has happened. There are hundreds of cases just as creepy as that one popping up all over the place that make Joe look less like a work of fiction and more like he was plucked straight from a news headline.
Hello there. I'm Joe.
And not only is social media stalking a dangerous game for those who are on the receiving end of the attention, it actually encourages us all to act a little more like Joe every day. Like we mentioned before, we've all been there, right? We've developed a crush on someone and then started following them on Instagram. And then we see some recurring people who pop up in all of their photos, and we're naturally curious as to who they are. We wonder if they could be that person's girlfriend or boyfriend, so we decide to investigate. Casually, of course. So we keep clicking and scrolling, and the next thing we know, though it's 2 in the morning and we're 35 people deep into someone's life, being extra careful not to accidentally like their sister's, best friend's, brother's, cousin's, girlfriend's, dog's picture from 67 weeks ago. The kind of general information that we get on social media only makes us want to know more, to want all of the details, to put the puzzle together. But the puzzle pieces presented on Instagram or Snapchat are rarely enough to actually get to the truth. So all we end up doing is drawing our own conclusions by making up stories that don't make all that much sense. And maybe that's one of the reasons that we have a hard time seeing Joe as just a villain. We'd never take it as far as he does, and his violent streak definitely sets him apart, but we can't escape how easy it is to fall down those social media rabbit holes and just get a little carried away. Which is exactly what the creators of this show want us to feel, believe it or not. The entire show was created to show us things either about ourselves or about the people who we fall for, and make us ask those weird questions about why. When reading the original book, showrunner Sarah Gamble found herself rooting for Joe and Beck to stay together all the way to the end, even after Joe had shown his true colors again and again and again. That's why, when she started making You, she tried to make it as much like a classic rom-com as possible. Because when you think about it, most of the heroes in our favorite romantic comedies are kind of giant creeps. They are overly persistent, don't take no for an answer, and have a habit of chasing people a whole lot more than anyone should in real life. Gamble has even said that if you replace the heartwarming music in any rom-com with a David Fincher-style scary soundtrack, it would change the entire meaning of the movie. Which is basically what she did with You. Rooting for the bad guy is something that goes back centuries, and the list of questionable characters who we want to get the girl in the end goes on and on. From Edward in Twilight, who, while dreamy, is super possessive and controlling, all the way back to Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, who all around suck, and literally has a woman trapped in an attic, but who we swoon for nonetheless. There's no real scientific reason for why we see these types of characters as attractive, but there are definitely some theories about it. There really is something to the idea of someone who loves you so much that they'll do anything to be with you. And we mean anything. But look, while that might be a nice idea in theory, in practice, it's a whole other story. What we actually want is someone who has their own life, as well as an interest in ours, and someone who won't follow our best friend out jogging and hit her over the head with a rock because he thinks she's turning us against him. That is all bad news, and nothing that any of us should ever aspire to. But that's why we have entertainment, right? As a way to live out those ill-advised fantasies without actually having to live through them. Penn Badgley himself has come out to question our collective thirst for Joe. The actor has taken to Twitter to respond to fans who tweeted him about how attractive they find his character, asking them to think more closely about why exactly that might be. He says that because so many of our movies and TV throughout history have portrayed characters like Joe as heroes or objects of affection, that we have actually become conditioned to do backflips in order to justify their actions. He knows that the way he plays the character and the way he looks share a big part of the responsibility for why we love Joe, and has been open about how a different actor or actress might get an entirely different reception. Penn says that he likes to see the show as a bit of a social experiment about how far they can push the character before fans eventually turn on him. The thing is, the more complicated Joe gets, the more compelling the show is. If he were just a one-dimensional bad boy, or a boring run-of-the-mill good guy, we'd probably all have lost interest by now. But because he is a very confused and confusing young man who has, yes, done some horrible things, we relate to the fact that he isn't perfect because none of us are. Sure, our imperfections don't usually lead to the same psychopathic tendencies that Joe's do, and we're grateful for that. But watching him struggle against his demons and actually try to be a good guy makes for some seriously entertaining TV. But in any case, we're about to go change all of our social media to private. We seriously suggest you do the same. While we don't think we should be too freaked out to post on social media ever again and return to the dark ages before computers, it is good to be reminded just how public really is, and to think about who you want to show all of your activity to. But next time you get a crush on some cutie in a bookstore, remember, a little light social media stalking never hurt anybody. Just as long as it doesn't end up with someone locked up forever in a soundproof plexiglass box. What did you think of this video? Are you a Joe stan? Or do you find the whole thing a little too creepy? Are you gonna think twice before posting on social media? Or do you feel fine to keep on sharing? Let us know in the comments, and we hope you had fun watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of our latest videos.